Hello, everybody, and welcome back to a very special anniversary edition of Kavam, a Doctor Who podcast where, well, you should know by now, we talk about the DVDs and Blu-rays and Doctor Who in general. And this edition marks a year since we first started our first episode when we discussed the season 8 Blu-ray, I believe, almost 12 months ago, back in mid-April, 21st of April, I think it was last year. So it's very exciting to celebrate the anniversary, albeit maybe not with quite the story we were expecting it to be. It's going to be fun though, and I'm joined by my three trusty guests, of course, Ryan and Charlie, who've been here since the beginning, and Bill, who joined within the last year. So Ryan, are you excited to be celebrating our first anniversary of the podcast?
Yeah, it's certainly definitely going to be exciting. I wish it was for talking about a more memorable episode, but
yeah.
Hey, those are the breaks, I suppose.
Well, exactly. Yeah. And Charlie, I mean, do you remember much of our first podcast? I feel like it was probably awful because we didn't know what we were doing. But do you remember it like a year ago?
Yes, it was interesting because we were talking about the season 8 box set, and I didn't have the season 8 box set. I've since got it, but
yes,
yeah, I remember I didn't really have much to say about that. But we talked about like cover art and stuff.
Oh yeah, we did, didn't we? Yes, I remember now. Yes, that was good fun. And Bill, what was your? I can't actually remember which was your first episode you joined us. Was it Evil of the Daleks, or was it just after that?
I think. No, that was it. I think the first one that I was on was the season 23 one.
Ah, yes, yeah, that was it. Yeah.
I remember that was a lot of fun discussing Trial of a Time Lord.
Yeah, an interesting season.
Yeah,
it's fair to say, and some interesting features as well. Yeah, exactly.
Yeah, no, it's just been a lot of fun. Obviously, I've not been here for as long as the rest of you have, but even just these past few months, it's been really a lot of fun to just be here and talk about episodes and home media releases and special features and all sorts. Yeah, it's been really good.
Yeah, exactly. And I feel like today we're kind of going to cover off a bit of everything that this podcast does, is because we're going to talk about an episode, we're going to talk about some Blu-rays and some special features and all that sort of stuff. We're kind of going to cover a bit of everything this podcast does today. But quickly, let's just go around the room as it is. I'm seeing you on a screen, so we're going to say around the room. Ryan, what's been your favourite thing that we've chatted about on Kavam in the last year? If that's not too big a question to ask.
Oh, blimey.
Or your favourite episode, or just favourite thing we've done?
Well, I think when we were talking about season 17, I mean, anytime we talked about season 17, I think that was certainly a lot of fun.
Got to shoehorn a reference to Erato into any podcast, of course.
Who can forget that, of course?
Yeah, I mean, absolutely.
It's become the running gag in every...
Yeah, it's true.
So we always tend to bring up Erato.
Yeah,
as best we can. And even though I was, as you know, I've already documented my very frustrated thoughts on Doctor Who Flux. I mean, all the episodes we've done talking about it, as frustrating as most of the episodes were, I still had fun talking about it. So I think that was... Also, I think those episodes were definitely also highlights. So definitely those ones in particular.
Yeah, exactly. What about you, Charlie? Any particular highlights of the year?
I was just going to say season 17 as well. I feel it's a lot of fun talking about the more interesting, more divisive side of Doctor Who. But besides that, probably I really did enjoy our second episode ever. I think it was our animation discussion. That was good.
Yeah, that was really good. Yeah, chatting about all the different animation releases. I mean, it's a shame that we're not adding many more to that, really, most likely, is it? But no, that was a lot of fun, absolutely. Yeah, and
as well as probably slating the Web of Fear animation.
Yeah, that was a fun moment, absolutely.
And season 24 Blu-ray box set, I did enjoy discussing that as well. That was good.
Yeah, no, there's lots. Yeah, I forget all these great moments we've had chatting about stuff, slating stuff, praising some things. But I don't want to say we're a negative Doctor Who podcast because we're not generally. And Bill, since you joined us, what has been one of your favourite sort of things to discuss on the podcast?
Well, I think like Ryan was saying, like the Doctor Who Flux episode reviews, they were good fun to do. I mean, regardless of our like actual thoughts on the actual series, like it was still fun to discuss each episode every week with each other and to just kind of talk about like if like a lot of the time I think with a lot of these podcasts we tend to have more or less kind of same kind of opinions as each other, or at least very similar ones. And so I think it's kind of good to, with those reviews, especially to kind of to see what we agreed on and what we didn't kind of agree on, perhaps. But yeah, I those, like, one element of this podcast since I joined that has really stood out. But also I think the one we did about our favorite special, that really stood out to me as well.
Exactly.
Because, it was like the ones we picked were really kind of like showing just how like different and varied the Doctor Who special features can be.
Yeah, absolutely. Yeah, that was a really fun one. I definitely enjoyed that. And I think my one highlight, just before we move on, was probably our Sharda episode we did. The very quickly out of date Sharda episode we did early on, where we discussed the many editions of Sharda, which was great fun to look at and discuss and analyse how good or bad these various versions were. And as we said on that podcast at the time, inevitably it would be out of date, and just like 2 months later they announced the season 17 box set. And so it was out of date. So, you know, maybe one day when there's another 3 more versions of Sharda, we'll do another one. Or we'll have to find another, I don't know, is there another story that's had many, many different releases? I feel like Spared from Space has had quite a few, but I can't think of many others that have had enough releases to create its own podcast on.
Space will inevitably get released again when season 7 gets announced.
Exactly.
So that could be the 4th or 5th release. Who knows how many it's had.
Yeah, well, I guess, you know, there was a VHS, then the DVD, then the special edition DVD, then the Blu-ray / Steelbook, I think they did at the time, and then there's going to be another Blu-ray one of it. So a few to discuss. But anyway, that's for another podcast, I'm sure. We continuously say that's a Pertwee story, and talking of Pertwee villains, we come on to Legend of the Sea Devils. Of course, rather more iconically appearing in 1972. We come to chat about the Easter special in 2022 for Doctor Who, the unfortunately lowest rated episode of Doctor Who of all time, based on the UK TV viewing figures, which is not ideal either, but we kind of have to focus on the fact that RTD is coming back, and that's the positive side. But of course, viewing figures don't mean everything. There are many a story that got terrible viewing figures and was actually great. So I feel like we need to properly dig down into this story. The return of the Sea Devils for the first time since 1984. We previewed it, we chatted about the trailer, we did lots of discussion about it beforehand. And I think the overriding opinion was, it'll probably be quite good. We're quite excited about this. A standalone adventure with Sea Devils, a sort of historical story. Chibnall's quite good at that. Was it any good, guys? Did it work?
I remember saying I think it was the last podcast or the podcast before that, this is going to be the best of the best of Whittaker's last year as the Doctor. Boy, was I wrong on that one. In terms of the specials, I think even the Daleks is probably still the best one, and I think it could end up still being the best one. That's not to say the episode was bad. I mean, I think I enjoyed it. It was more enjoyable than most of Flux, I would say. I mean, it's definitely a hell of a lot better than Survivors of the Flux and the Vanquishers, both of which I just did not like at all. So at least this is more insane than that. And it's not bad. The problem is it's just not memorable. I think it's just one of those stories where it's just in one ear, out the other, and I think that's just its biggest detriment, really. And watching it, I don't know. I think there was an interview. I think I might have got this wrong. I think there was an interview with one of the producers, or I was with Chibnall or a different producer a couple of months ago, saying that this was meant to be an hour long, exactly an hour long, and yet it's. I think it was like it ended up being like 48 minutes overall. And watching it, I could tell there were huge chunks of it that was gone. Like, it just, the editing was not good. There were some very weird edits, primarily in the opening sections, where all of a sudden the Doctor's hearing something, and then all of a sudden, oh yeah, there's a Sea Devil, and they easily capture it straight away, and then later on, when you had Madam Ching on that beach, and then just a few minutes later, she's just suddenly on a boat far out to sea, and then all of a sudden Dan and I can't remember the name of that supporting.
I honestly can't remember his name. Has anybody got his name?
Yeah, that's the
No.
thing. I can't remember some of these characters' names, and they're suddenly on the boat as well. And it's just like, how did that happen? And they don't even really explain what the hell that monster was, even if that was the Merker or not. And honestly, I never thought I'd hear myself say this, but I actually want to know if that was the Merker or not. I need to know.
I think it wasn't. I think the idea was it was some sort of Chinese legend. I think the creature, well, obviously it was actually a sea devil kind of. I think the Doctor calls it a sniffer dog for the sea devils. But I think it was based on a Chinese legend or something like that. I don't think it was the Merker, unfortunately.
Honestly, as much as I despise the Merker, and if anyone who's listening, if watching, if this is your first podcast episode and you're wondering what the Merker is, all you need to know, it's a monster whose existence is blasphemous and unholy.
Pretty much, yeah.
And honestly, as much as I have my grievances with that monster, there is a part of me that wanted to know if that actually was an updated, evolved version of the Merker, because I think that would have been so hilarious. But hey, can't have them all, I suppose. Anyway, so yeah, I just felt like a lot of it felt a bit both slow and rushed at the same time. Like, I feel like the pacing was very off. I think could be probably due to the editing issues, as I mentioned, and the Sea Devils were kind of cool, but I don't think you hardly spend that much time with them anyway. So yeah, that's the thing. I think in the end, I just thought it was just barely okay. Not great, not bad, just there. That's all it is. It's there.
Exactly. I mean, when I first watched it a couple of hours after it actually aired, so I wasn't like keeping up with the fan response immediately as it was happening. And I kind of watched it, and well, actually, you can see I have a live reaction on my YouTube channel of it. I thought it was all right. I didn't think it was that bad on first watch, and I was almost slightly surprised to see how negative the reaction on social media was this episode, because it was, it was bad. Like, people hated it. They thought it was absolutely the worst thing Doctor's ever done. That was the impression I got. And I'm like, I look back at it and I'm like, yeah, there are many problems with it. Like, I do not fundamentally understand why that episode was 47 minutes long. Like, that doesn't make any sense to me, because clearly it was massively cut down. There were massive edits, put in, as we've said. The editing was shocking in places because there was just massive jumps of logic, of time and all that. And, even if it was that the BBC only gave them a 50-minute slot, use those extra 2 minutes you've got there, like 2.5 minutes, use them. Why did you just waste them there? You could have, I don't know, maybe there was, some of the shots that they would have been slotted in were, shot badly, poor continuity or something. Maybe there's a reason why some shots weren't able to be included rather than the fact that they just cut them all down. I don't know, but it just baffles me that it was so heavily edited when seemingly there was room to play with. And quite why, when every Doctor Who special ever has been at least an hour long, why was this one only 50 minutes? That I kind of was rolling with it before the episode, but then I look at it, I'm like, this episode clearly needed 60 and almost looks like it was made as a 60-minute, and then they cut it down to 47, and that just never works. I don't know. Charlie, what was your initial reaction to this episode?
I've actually, like lots of people who've reviewed it and stuff, have watched it twice. I've still just watched it the once.
Okay.
My initial reaction was it was okay, but I feel as I've thought about it more, as I've seen more people discuss it and notice other things, I feel it's my perception of it has decreased slightly. I'd say it's an interesting one. Yeah, what you were both saying about how it was originally like an hour and was cut down. Yeah, it's very obvious. I couldn't really tell what was happening. It was very confusing. As for the supporting cast, I didn't really care about them, to be honest. Like, we had Ji-hun, his sacrifice at the end. Yeah. It was nice, sure, and it was a good moment, but I just didn't really find myself caring about any of these characters. And that other supporting character whose dad was killed by Madam Ching.
Yeah.
This one scene where they literally sneak aboard the ship and he wants to kill Madam Ching. And then she just says, all right, I won't kill you and you can stay on my ship. And he's really happy and he like hugs her or something. It just doesn't really make much sense.
Felt like there was maybe a few scenes in there that got easily edited out. Maybe it was those scenes that explore the sort of connection more. And maybe that was some of the stuff they cut down for time. And if they just put those, if that was the case, you needed those scenes to help make that final scene work.
Yeah, I feel the scenes that they did cut out, I feel it should have there should have been more pirate scenes there. Like I feel like they were sort of promising us a larger scale, pirate sort of epic, and we didn't really get that. Like there was 3 proper like pirate characters in there, or basically 2, and they weren't really very well developed at all. I just didn't really get it. Yeah, and as well, there were lots of issues with the actual physical editing of some scenes, like the fight scenes. I don't know if have any of you seen Quantum of Solace?
Yeah.
The fight scenes in that were very reminiscent of that. I feel it was like very quick cuts. You couldn't really tell what was going on.
Exactly.
Yeah, I think I spotted at one point there was like 4 cuts in a second or something between shots. Like, it's ridiculous. It's like, does that really add to the action?
Yeah, I know. It's very confusing and chaotic to watch. The CGI is very dodgy as well. I feel you can tell that they've stretched the Flux budget out to accommodate these 3 specials. And the fact that this is basically just an extra episode inserted in, I feel the statue cracking, the Sea Devil doing that weird Mario jump onto
that was bizarre.
Yeah. It was quite something. And just generally, it's very, I don't think it's absolutely awful. I think it's better than Warriors of the Deep.
Yes.
But I'd still say it's bad, just not that bad. Like, I wouldn't go as far to say it's decent. That's for sure. Yeah.
Yeah, exactly. What about you, Bill? Are you on the same page as all of us, or did you find any more positives in this story?
I mean, I am more like everything that you've all just said about, especially the editing. I completely agree with, because, like watching it, I mean, I must admit, my first thought was that they'd kind of rushed it together last minute. That maybe it was a last minute special, and that it was originally just going to be Eve of the Daleks and the Centenary, and then maybe this is the 3rd special that then the BBC gave to them, sort of thing. But yeah, I mean, I'm a bit like you in some ways, Elliot, in that having looked at how people reacted to it, like straight after it aired, I was thinking in some ways, like, did we watch the same episode? Because not to say like I thought it was amazing, because I really do think it was a very flawed special, and I was definitely hoping that it would be a lot better than it turned out to be. I think the main problem, the reason why the reaction to it has just been so negative is probably because, like, the fact that we were getting so hyped up for the Sea Devils' return because they haven't been used for so long. And I think that kind of maybe in some ways gave us too high expectations for it. To kind of make us think, oh, this is going to be, a really, really good Sea Devil episode. This is going to, this is going to fix what Warriors of the Deep did to them and everything. And it kind of did, but it kind of didn't really. It was, to be honest, a lot of what I've been hearing that a lot of people felt like you could more or less swap out any other monster for the Sea Devils in this story. And I completely agree with that, because there's no real reason for it to be the Sea Devils other than them basically being like, oh, well, they haven't been used for so long, we may as well bring them back.
Yeah, and I think I got that impression from an interview. I was either with Chris Chibnall or Ella Road, where they basically said, we had this story and we were like, oh yeah, it'd be great to throw the Sea Devils in there. They'd be a great villain for this story. And it's like, with a villain like the Sea Devil, you think you'd write the story around them rather than just slot them in as your generic villain to function as a part of that story, which I think is what we got.
Yeah, and I think they're kind of the whole kind of plot that they had to like convert the entirety of the Earth into water was very strange, because I don't really understand why they'd want to do that, because surely, because we know that they're cousins of the Silurians, who obviously grew up on land.
Yeah.
So obviously the Sea Devils are used to the Earth having land, and it just, I don't know, it just felt weird. It felt like Chibnall was just trying to give them a reason to be, the bad guys in this, rather than like you say, just kind of thinking it out and like planning it out a bit more clearly and everything. I did like the Phasmin stuff. I think that was the greatest strength of this special, because I'm sure, I can't remember who it was. I think it may have been Ella Road, or it may have been someone else, but I'm sure in an interview with Doctor Magazine, I'm sure someone said that, Phasmin wasn't going to be like shown that much, like not really kind of written. It's not, it wouldn't be a big part of it basically for this special, but it was actually a very big part of it. But in a good way. Like, I liked the fact that we kind of more or less got that kind of talk between Doctor and Yaz on the beach at the end, that they've kind of been hinting at for a good few episodes now. So yeah, that was nice. I don't know, we'll have to see what the Centenary will do with the whole Phasma stuff and how that will wrap up. I mean, I know the Centenary's got enough stuff to cram in with how many characters.
Yeah, we'll certainly come on to that.
Yeah. But hopefully they can wrap that up at least fairly decently.
Yeah, exactly. Ryan,
you mentioned about the whole fact that they just seem like they throw the Sea Devils in just to complete the story. I remember when the Sontarans came back in 2008 with the Sontaran stratagem, there was a big hype surrounding that, the fact that they did, even though the Sontarans aren't quite as big of a monster as, say, the Daleks or the Cybermen, they still I think they wrote that story around the Sontarans and the fact that they were coming back, and they had them on the Radio Times cover, all the magazine covers saying the Sontarans are back. And I just feel like the Sea Devils at least should have gotten something akin to that, but I think the fact that there was nothing on it maybe kind of shows why not that many people tuned in, perhaps because it wasn't really promoted that well. The fact that there was very limited marketing. And also, just a quick little side note, that bit with the Chief Sea Devil just leapfrogging his way over to that ship, it reminded me, and not in a good way, of John Sim leapfrogging his way all over the place at the end of time.
Yes, that's the one.
And he has these superpowers all of a sudden, and the way he demonstrates it is by leapfrogging his way all over the place. And, the last thing I wanted was to be reminded of that.
Yeah, exactly. It was not the greatest moment for the show, I think it's fair to say. And I think it's interesting you say about the Sontarans and the story being written around them previously. And I think it was kind of notable that the Sea Devils didn't have a big reintroduction moment. It was just about a minute into the episode, oh hello, it's a Sea Devil, there's a stone statue of a Sea Devil, and then there's a Sea Devil, and the Doctor's like, hi, and it wasn't a big moment, it wasn't a big thing. We only ever saw one Sea Devil actually have a speaking part. I'm pretty sure there's only the Sea Devil leader was the only one who ever actually spoke. The others all just stared and looked around in the background, and I just felt like they didn't, there's so many great opportunities sort of visually that you could work with the Sea Devils coming up out of the sea and whatever and things like that, like we've seen in the past. I just didn't feel like there was any real iconic moment for the Sea Devils in this story. It was cool to see the pirate idea behind it, the sort of Sea Devil pirates type idea. That was, it's nice to have a little twist on them, but I just felt like there wasn't actually really a lot to it, which was a real shame, I thought. And maybe I'm just being stupid, but the Sea Devils clearly don't need to live underwater, because they walk around on land all the time. So why do they need to turn their whole planet into water when they don't actually need to live under the water? Was there any... in none of their stories have they ever actually been seen properly underwater. The only time was them coming out of the water in the Sea Devils. They were never underwater in Warriors of the Deep or this. And I just don't quite understand why, therefore, that plan makes any sense.
Yeah, I was going to say, what... my initial thought was the only explanation is they're trying to get vengeance on humans for what happened in the Sea Devils, but the Sea Devils are set in 1970s or maybe 80s, depending.
Yeah, it's set in the future from their point of view, isn't it? Yeah.
Yeah, this is 1800. So what's up? You know, it just doesn't make sense.
And if they try and turn the planet into water, wouldn't that kill off the Silurians? And surely, I mean, and the Silurians they're the same species technically. I mean,
exactly.
They're Homo reptilian, all of them are. So they will be effectively killing off a great portion of their species in the process. So it's, I don't know.
Yeah, I fear this story is kind of, well, naturally it is like many other Chris Chibnall stories, where you can kind of, on the surface, if you don't think about it too much, it can be a solidly enjoyable and entertaining story. But if you start to really inspect it and really think about it and try and, really knock into the logic of it, it just kind of collapses, which I feel is so often a problem with Chris Chibnall episodes.
Kind of like the Ghost Monument from the first series.
Yeah. Well, there is no plot in the Ghost Monument. That's the problem. It's just it's just a race from point A to point B. That's not a plot. That's just.
It basically sound like a neat idea, but the thing is, there was just nothing to it, and the fact that if you think about all the logistics, what they have to go through in the Ghost Monument, it just doesn't completely work. And I just feel like, and that was a story where it was just in one ear, out the other, and this is the exact same thing. It kind of reminded me of the Ghost Monument in some places where it's really slow, but also really rushed at the same time.
Yeah. Exactly. And I know, Charlie, you said about the Ji-hun having his little sacrifice moment. And I've seen this on social media, and I do kind of agree that it's first it's rehashing the same thing that happened at the end of The Timeless Children, when Ko Sharma's turns up and is like, I'll blow myself up for you, Doctor, so you don't have to. And it's just, it doesn't really feel very doctory when she has these moments where she basically just lets somebody else go and get themselves killed to save, well, the other people, but also herself. Like, that's not what we have generally seen from previous incarnations of the Doctor, that they won't accept any person dying, and certainly not just hand them the button and say, okay, you can save me and just kill yourself. Like, I just found that particularly jarring in this episode, I think. And it almost feels like Chris has written himself into a hole narratively, and the only way out of it is a very cheap, let's get somebody to commit suicide. Like, that's it. I don't know. I mean, Bill, what did you feel like that was a problem with this episode, or with, we've seen it a couple of times now?
Yeah, I think when I was watching it live, I think I immediately thought of The Timeless Children and Ko Sharma's, because it is very strange. I mean, if Ji-hun had just knocked the Doctor out, which is kind of what used to happen a lot when characters sacrifice themselves, like before Chris Chibnall, that would have been okay, because then it's not like the Doctor's just been like, oh, okay, then goodbye.
Yeah.
Like the Doctor's actually resisted Ji-hun just trying to commit suicide, basically. But I mean, it's okay, but like The Timeless Children, it's just like you say, it's not really a very good enough kind of ending for it, really. It's just a very cheap way out for Chris Chibnall, I think, basically. Yeah,
exactly. And you feel like you've been building up throughout this story, and then it's just that moment, and then, oh, we're back on the pirate ship, goodbye everybody, time for a Thamesmead moment. Like, it was obviously also massively rushed, that ending, which I think led us through. I don't know, Ryan, Charlie, do you have any thoughts on this Doctor being... I feel like it just shows the kind of common trait that, for whatever reason, Chris Chibnall's taken for this Doctor, that she's a very passive Doctor, that she kind of just lets stuff happen around her, and and I don't think that's really the character of the Doctor in many ways. And I just feel like so often we've seen that in this era.
I do think that Jodie Whittaker is probably my least favorite main incarnation of the Doctor. I'm not trying to be like, the Doctor's bad because she's female, or I'm not trying to be an NMD or anything. But I feel just like you said, her passiveness, her reaction to Graham's cancer, her just general passiveness, just letting people just be sacrificed. Like other Doctors, they felt a lot of remorse at the things that they'd let happen. Like, obviously we've got the 11th Doctor's speech in the Rings of Akaten really showing how much guilt he feels. Obviously loads of moments from the 10th Doctor, 12th Doctor's speech of war, they the Doctor's main personality trait is that they don't kill people. They hate doing that.
Yeah.
And the 13th Doctor just doesn't actively kill people, but she just doesn't really seem to care about much.
No, there's not a second thought. It's like, oh, you're going to blow yourself up. Thank you, you're a legend. Goodbye. And then we don't even mention it again. Like, that's it. Whereas the 10th Doctor, he'd go around and, have a soppy moment about it for 10 minutes. Like, I know that's the other extreme, but like that, it just feels such a jarring change to what we've seen from previous incarnations of the Doctor.
Yeah, I remember they did something like this. I remember when I watched the first season with her, they did something with Demons of the Punjab where she had to allow them, but it was acceptable there because it's part of history.
Yeah, exactly.
And it was the same with Rosa as well. And I thought it worked really well with those stories because there's a reason behind it. It's part of history. She can't do anything about it. But they decided to let that continue for other stories as well that isn't really a historical story, and I'm just like, why was that even necessary? I think the worst example was the Timeless Children, where because she was involved in basically a situation that was very similar to with that was trying to ape the War Doctor moment from Day of the Doctor, big red button on blowing up Gallifrey, and then all of a sudden Ko Showers turns up and is like, do it, and she's like, okay, then it turns out. It seemed like before then the dilemma was, should I blow up my home planet or not? But now, with letting Ko Showers do it, it seemed like the dilemma was, I don't want to blow myself up. And it's just... I don't know if I would go so far as to say she's my least favourite. I still think Peter Davison's my least favourite Doctor. And I feel like, in a way, Peter Davison was also sort of kind of a little bit passive as well. I've noticed there are similar traits between the two Doctors with Peter and Jodie again, and it's a real shame because Jodie Whittaker's a really good actress, and I just can't help but feel like she deserves so much better than this. I guarantee if Russell or Stephen was still doing Doctor Who and they casted her, she would have had a much better received run, in my opinion. And I'm hoping that, like Colin Baker before her, she gets a new lease of life in the Big Finish audio dramas. I'm praying they...
Yeah.
I know it usually takes a bit longer to get licenses, I suppose, for new Doctors for Big Finish, but I'm hoping they do it much sooner and quicker for Jodie Whittaker, so that way she gets a much better lease on life and gets a well better received than she had in the past.
Exactly. Yeah. If Big Finish can just get Manic Gill to do it as well, I'm sure the two of them will come and do it together, no problem, because they're such good friends. So like, I'd be really hopeful that she does get that opportunity, and also, if anything, I would hope that it's kind of bad timing really, but that she'd at some point end up in a multi-Doctor story with a different person writing it and just see what it's like with a different writer writing her Doctor. I guess, as I say, unfortunately, the 60th is next year, and I don't think she's going to turn up in the 60th because it will be the next episode after she just left. So I don't think that's going to happen. So it might be a while before we see that, if at all. But I just feel like that would be a great opportunity to see, a different writer's approach on that character of the Doctor, because obviously Chris Chibnall would have no involvement in that at all at that point. So I don't know. I think that'd be quite an interesting thing to explore.
Yeah, I think I was just going to say, whatever is going on with Doctor Who in like 2033 or something, if at all, if New Who's still going, I really want the showrunner at the time to include Jodie in a past, in a multi-Doctor story, just to see what another showrunner and writer could do with her. Because like you were saying, it's not Jodie Whittaker's fault at all. The negative reception of this era. It's not entirely Chibnall either, but it's definitely not Jodie. So I'd really like to see someone else. I still wish that Jodie got another series with RTD. I feel that'd be really good, but I do understand why he wants a fresh slate,
So the other big part of this story, which I know, Bill, you touched on a little bit earlier on, was Phasmin, which we knew was going to be approached and covered after it was introduced into the show properly in Eve of the Daleks. Now, my personal opinion is that this was probably the strongest aspect of this episode. And kind of when we cut to that scene on the beach with about 4 minutes of the episode to go, they were probably the strongest minutes of this whole story for me. At least, I feel like Jodie and Mandip's performances in that scene was just they really pitched that perfectly. They really sold that scene in that moment. I mean, it was slightly random just before to see Dan getting a call from Diane. That seemed to be our random cameo of the episode after we had Carl in Eve of the Daleks. We had Diane turning up for 5 seconds in this story. And yeah, I don't know. It just really felt like a strong emotional moment, and it really felt real between the two characters, which I feel like hasn't always been the case with emotive scenes in the Chris Chibnall era. I don't know, what did you think of this scene, Charlie? How did it strike you, this sort of, well, throughout the episode, but particularly the ending scene?
Yeah, I've never been a huge fan of Thasmin before. Like, I always thought like the idea wasn't too great. I've never been a huge fan of Doctor companion relationships to begin with, like Tenrose, but I feel it's slightly worrying that this is the best handled aspect of the episode, something which I would not have believed 1 or 2 years ago. Yeah, I feel it was very well written, well acted. Part of me does think that Chibnall, that these parts were handled more by Ella Rhodes.
You do wonder, yeah.
Yeah, that maybe Chibnall did not all of the other stuff, but I don't know. I get that impression because the writing does seem very different.
Yeah.
I think it was handled quite well. It was obviously very well acted by Jodie and Mandip. And before, like in Eve of the Daleks, I thought, is this really necessary? Like, did they have any chemistry before? But I can kind of see it now. Like you said, it feels more real. And I'm actually probably mostly curious for the Centenary special as to how it's going to be handled in that. Obviously, skipping a bit ahead to the trailer, we've got that scene where she's kind of regenerating, and she obviously says like Yaz, and I feel that's going to be quite an emotional part of the episode. I think it's going to be interesting.
Yeah, exactly. And I think it's interesting because I know a lot of people were worried that we were just going to tread the same ground of Tenrose, of the Doctor in school reunion and going, you can spend the rest of life with me, but I can't spend it with you and all that. And I feel like they kind of covered that idea, but it also felt it just felt kind of fresh to an extent. I feel like we kind of saw more emotion and more openness from this Doctor than we've seen at any point. Like, she's been the most closed off emotionally Doctor that we've certainly seen in New Who. Like, she can't talk about her feelings, basically. It's been this Doctor's character trait. And I felt like for the first time in this episode, she really opened up that little bit to Yaz about, almost that she does feel the same way, but she can't bear the idea of, watching Yaz die at some point in the future, because she knows that's inevitably how it's going to end. And I just felt that it I don't know, it just really hit in this episode to me. I felt you really felt that. You could see that trait in the Doctor. You could see kind of from all her past experiences in her various incarnations how hurt she's been by almost, being in relationships or having, emotional feelings towards people in the past, that she's trying so hard to distance herself from that, and just trying to enjoy the present moment and all that kind of thing. I just felt that really sold quite well. I don't know, Ryan, what was your take on all this?
I thought it was decently handled. I think I would have felt more emotion had it been brought up much earlier than Eve of the Daleks.
That is the problem, yeah.
I feel like at best it should have been brought up just after, about the same time Flux started. Yeah. I feel like that was the first. I feel like that's where it should have been brought up, and then if it had done that, at least there would have been more of a build up to this moment that would make it more impactful. But on its own, it's fine. But I just feel like it's a weird thing to try and cram into 2 episodes, or 3 if we're counting the Centenary, especially if they decide to continue more on this route. So yeah, I don't really have much more to say other than I still feel like in terms of Quasar Doctor companion romance, I still feel like it was probably better handled to an extent with 12 and Clara. I still feel like that was a much more nuanced, much more layered, more better way of doing a romance without explicitly saying romance. And
it's what it was, but it was there were so many layers to that relationship that you could kind of almost read it in different ways depending on kind of how you felt about it almost, I think.
Yeah, I remember that bit in Under the Lake and Before the Flood, where the Doctor's uncertain if he should do it, saying, I'm doomed to my fate, and Clara's just like, don't be like that. She said, if you love me in any way, you would come back. And that, I feel like there were definitely better. That was definitely done much better, I feel, than this with 13 and Yaz, because, as I said, there has been very little build up, and it's only done in a small amount of scenes in 2 episodes. So, yeah, I feel like that's the unfortunate side of it. I mean, I thought it was decent, but I feel like it could have been a lot better.
Yeah, I think that's the fundamental problem that kind of this is always going to be fighting against now, is just that it was introduced at such a late stage that it will. If you tried really hard, you could try and find little bits of it in Doctor Who Flux and maybe some of Series 12, but really it's only become particularly explicit in the last 2 episodes, as you say, which is just naturally dragged the idea down a little bit, I guess. And Bill, have you got anything else, any other thoughts you had on all those scenes?
No, just to say that, like, again, I agree with all of what you've been saying, and yeah, it is a shame that they've waited this long to really bring it up, because given that it's the first, at least the first same-sex relationship between the Doctor and a companion, it kind of feels like it deserves to be given a bit more time to be properly fleshed out, really. I know, like you say, you could go back to some of the earlier stuff and say, oh, a little hints of it here and there and everything, but really we know from, I think Jodie and Mandip themselves said that they were the ones that wanted it to be included in Eve of the Daleks in the first place. So it is a shame that it is such a last minute thing, because, you know, if the scenes that we got in this episode shows that if they just planned it out a bit more and given it a bit more time, I think we really could have kind of, as you say, kind of tread the same ground as some of the other relationships that we've had, but also still tell something new and fresh and different. As the rest of you, I'm not normally that massive of a fan of Doctor and companion relationships, because, to be honest, most of the past ones, especially in the 10th Doctor's era, like with Ten and Rose, I did not like that at all. As much as the 10th Doctor is one of my favourite Doctors, I would not say that I'm a massive fan of Tenrose at all. So I'm glad that, like, with Phasmin, it's not just gone down the Tenrose route of, you know, kind of being almost kind of a quite toxic kind of thing between people who, like the way Rose kind of treats Vicky in Series 2 and everything, and he kind of just gets sidelined between the 10th Doctor and Rose. That's so I'm glad that with Phasmin it's not like Dan's just encouraging it between the two of them and is like fully supportive of Yaz, and I think that's a really nice kind of thing to have between Yaz and Dan, because, you know, Dan has also not had much development, really. He still feels like he's only just arrived. I mean, he kind of has, but, you know, he's not really developed a real kind of proper rapport with, especially with the 13th Doctor, because they've had pretty much
they've had no screen time, have they? They've had nothing. And I think it says it all that we've been talking about this over for 45 minutes, and this is the first time we've mentioned Dan. Like, it just tells you that he's just, I don't dislike him, but he just doesn't have any real reason to be there, does he? He's just kind of there.
Yeah, he's just kind of like Bradley Walsh was for Series 11 and 12, which, you know, is fine. I mean, being the comic relief is completely fine. I loved it with Bradley Walsh. I loved it with Matt Lucas in Series 10. But with Dan, that is literally all he really is. There's no kind of an extra element to his character, because he's not really, apart from the stuff with Di, there's not really been much that's kind of been developed for him, which is a shame.
I feel like after Once Upon Time in Flux, after that episode, I feel like Dan just becomes a spare wheel after that. I feel like he had much more prominent role in the first 3 episodes of Flux, and then afterwards he just it's just along for the ride.
Yeah, well, he gets sidelined obviously in episode 5 into the pointless plot line of him and Jericho and Yaz and stuff. That's just a whole waste of time. And then just gets caught up in the melee that is the Vanquishers as well, where there's just no opportunity to do anything with any character. So it's kind of inevitable that it ends up this way, really. But yeah, and it's well pointed out, Bill, that he's the comic relief character. I wonder if series 14 will be the first time since series 9 to not have a comic relief companion. Now that's the big question, but we'll have 2 years to theorize that, I'm sure. Well, I don't think we have particularly positive overall opinions of this story. I'm sensing it's just an episode that's there. Okay. I'm going to ask you guys one question, which you have to answer. Is this episode, and briefly, is this episode better or worse than Planet of the Dead?
I think it's slightly better.
Okay.
But only very slightly.
Okay.
Because Planet of the Dead was just absolute nonsense. Yeah, but at least with this, it's a little bit more tolerable, but that's not saying much.
Okay, Charlie?
I'm going to have to go with a little bit worse. Not too much. I didn't hate Planet of the Dead. I thought it was all right, to be fair.
Yeah.
But I feel both of them are just sort of, they're towards the end of an era, the Easter specials, and they both sum up the very generic tropes within an era. I feel this was just everything. Overall, I don't hate the Chibnall era, but everything I did have problems with were just sort of in this episode, like bland side characters, random countdowns and stuff, some corridor running, I didn't hate it, nor did I hate Planet of the Dead, but I'd say I don't know, I just think Tennant's more enjoyable than Planet of the Dead. He saved that episode.
Okay. And Bill?
I mean, I would, like Ryan, I would say it's only slightly better. I mean, I think they're pretty almost on the same level as each other, really, because they're both quite bland episodes, really. I think it's kind of a shame that we don't have more Easter specials, because I think that's kind of one of the reasons why this one didn't do so well ratings wise. I think because people are so used to Doctor Who having Christmas specials and for the last few years New Year specials, that's why people will know, it will be on Christmas Day or New Year's Day. Whereas with Easter specials, we've only had 2, and so it's not really tradition, which I think that might be potentially one of the reasons why the ratings didn't do so well. But yeah, like Charlie was saying, they're just both very bland and kind of represent the most bland and basic elements of both the eras, really.
Yeah, and it's just not what you want from a penultimate episode of an era, really. It feels like it should be something big, something building to an ultimate climax of an era, but it just doesn't feel like that at all. It just feels like a bland special. But I do just about edge it over Planet of the Dead, so I guess our verdict is that it is the best Easter special of all time. So it's got that going for it. That really probably sells it a lot, better than it actually is. But the best Easter special of all time, according to the Kavam podcast. Well, there we go. That's our chat on Legends of the Sea Devils. And we're going to move swiftly on to the very end of Legends of the Sea Devils, or just after, and the centenary special trailer, which we got, which teased many exciting things to come, albeit a 6-month wait for that moment. And I'd just like to say quickly, I'm not sure if I said it on this podcast or whether it was just on Twitter, but I'm pretty sure I said this episode would end on an ominous shot of Jodie. And that's exactly what it ended on, and then flowed into the trailer. So I was quite pleased with myself that I correctly predicted how it ended. I mean, I said that she'd, say something ominous, like something is coming for me or whatever. And I guess I never want this moment to end is, it's not quite the same, but, kind of foreshadowing the idea that it is going to come to an end because she never wants this to come to an end. So I'm going to claim it that I was right. I got that right. Anyway, the trailer, guys. I think that was probably my most exciting moment of the episode. Or specifically when Tegan and Ace appeared in the trailer. That was the moment of this trailer for me. Ryan, what? Oh, I know you've generally been the most cynical person towards the centenary special of everybody on this podcast. Does this trailer raise any excitement, or are you still feeling very low expectations?
mixture of both. It's
Okay.
a mixture of both because obviously, of course, I'm excited about Tegan and Ace. I mean, when that happened, when it showed both of them, I would just repeatedly just shouted, "What? What? What?" And
Yeah.
I think Tennant would have been proud of me, the
Oh, yeah.
fact that I said what
Yeah.
many times. So yeah, because obviously those two are the quintessential companions of the 80s. I
Mhm.
mean, they are just absolutely iconic. Even though Peter Davison is my least favorite Doctor, and I find his era to be a mixed bag, Tegan was the best thing about that era for me. I mean, because I'm like, even if I'm not that into Davison, at least we've got Tegan to
Yeah.
help liven things up. So I'm happy she's back. Also, super happy Ace is back, and because she's also one of my favorites. Love Sophie Aldred as Ace. Met her once at a convention. She was super awesome.
Yeah.
So I'm so glad both of them are in it. So I think that could help liven the episode up more.
Mhm.
Although I'm a little bit worried they're going to be treated like how Captain Jack was
Yeah.
in Revolution of the Daleks, where he didn't really have that much to do. And same with Kate Lethbridge Stewart in Survivors of the Flux and the Vanquishers, and she's back in this as well. So, and I just can't help feel like there are some things I'm going to really enjoy. And I mean, of course, Ashard is back, and I have my theory about how he could come back.
Okay, how's that?
Do you want me to say it now? Or
Go for it. Do it. Yeah, throw your theory in the bag. Throw your theory in the.
It's either going to be one of two things.
Okay.
One is going to be set between Haunting of Villa Diodati and Ascension of the Cybermen.
Okay.
Or if it's set after the Timeless Children, there could be an explanation. The Cyberium, the living cyber AI. What if, because Ashard had it inside him for presumably a long time.
Yeah.
So what if it copied and downloaded his entire mind and personality into it? And so because of that, it left the Master, evolved to the point where it can have a physical form, and it's the lone Cyberman because it has its memories and personality in it. So
it's a good shout.
I think that could be a way of keeping him alive. So it's like saying, well, his physical body is dead, but his mind and consciousness still lives on through the Cyberium. So
yeah, that's a good shout.
That could be an explanation. So, and I'm happy that he's back because one of the best things, probably my favorite thing about the Jodie Whittaker era was the lone Cyberman, because I feel like he added a new dimension to the Cyberman the same way Davros did with the Daleks. So I was so happy they bringing him back because, again, great character. I felt like he got ultimately squandered and done dirty in the Timeless Children, which was one of many reasons why I dislike that episode so much, because they did one of the best villains in recent years poorly just to up the Master up more in a lame way. So I'm happy. I'm hoping they give him a better send off in this story, and so yeah, we have all these other characters. I'm just a bit concerned with the fact that it seems like there's going to be so much in this special, and even if it's like an hour and 15, an hour and a half, it feels like it has a lot to do with having it be a regeneration story, having it be a farewell to the companions, farewell to the Sacha Dhawan's Master, tying up the Timeless Child and the fugitive Doctor. I mean, she's going to pop up in there, no doubt.
Yeah.
The fact that Graham will be back, I mean, it seems from set reports, and Vinder's back, presumably Bell and Carvanista are back as well. Kate Lethbridge Stewart, Tegan Ace, and who knows how many of them.
I mean, clearly there's been more.
Showing up. So it's just so much. I'm just like, how are they going to try and wrap it all up?
Yeah.
All of it in the amount of time they have. It's gonna be interesting when it's October, November. That's August.
Indeed. And I mean, after Legend of the Sea Devils, I wouldn't be surprised if Chris tries to squeeze it into 52 minutes as well or something now, just to try and troll us all. But I really hope not. Charlie, there's a lot in this. There's a lot going on. There's a lot we probably don't even know yet of other characters. We know Graham's turning up again. That's been leaked in Filming Pictures. And as you say, Ryan, I think we can assume characters like Carvanista and Bell are going to be showing up, people like that. So, and the Ruth Doctor and all this. So I don't know. do you feel like it's impossible for this episode to work because there's so much in it, or do you have optimism for this story?
After seeing that trailer and thinking about it a bit, honestly, I can see this being fun, like a fun final episode. But there's no way that all of this can be wrapped up satisfyingly. Like you were saying, Ryan, that like they've got to say goodbye to obviously Jodie Whittaker and Sacha Dhawan's master. They've got to wrap up the timeless child, the timeless child, the Ruth Doctor. They've got to manage, Vinda, the 13th Doctor, Yaz, Dan, the Master, Tegan, Ace, the Daleks, the Cybermen, Ashad, Kate. It's just. I don't think it's going to be wrapped up in a very satisfying way at all. And Phasmin as well.
Yeah.
It's just what we saw from the trailer where I mentioned she was like regenerating, sort of. Yeah. I feel that's going to be something like induced by the Master and she's going to stop. Like, no way is that the actual regeneration.
I saw a theory and I wondered whether that's when she opens the fob watch and gets all her memories back. And that's actually what we're seeing happen there rather than... and that she doesn't want that to happen. I don't know, or something. Maybe that's what, because I agree. I don't think they'd show us the regeneration moment in a trailer, frankly, like that. And I don't think that'll be the actual moment, as you say. I think that's quite intriguing. But yeah, I share your concerns. As much as I want it to be really good and I want it to be a real, celebration of Doctor Who, because it kind of is an anniversary special, but also not. But there's just so much in this. I mean, we thought Time with the Doctor was bad in trying to wrap up an era in an hour. Like, this is another level of stuff in it. When you just reeled off that list there, I'm just like, this is what they've only announced so far. Like, there's clearly going to be a load more. They're just waiting for the next 6 months over the period of time to announce. I don't know, Bill, are you excited for this episode at the very least?
I'm like cautiously excited, I suppose. Yeah. Okay. Like the rest of you, I'm kind of wondering how the hell Chris Chibnall's going to be able to pull it off, because we've kind of more or less been here before with Chibnall with the Vanquishers, and we saw how that turned out.
It didn't work. Yes,
no, it did not work at all. So I mean, even if Ace and Tegan are probably not going to be utilized that well, it would be nice to have them back at least.
Very true. Very true.
Like with the Sea Devils in Legend of the Sea Devils, it was nice to have them back at least. They weren't written well, but it was nice to see them again.
Yeah.
But I mean, I like you. I want to be able to look forward to this, and I want it to work well, and I want Chris Chibnall to pull it off. I really do, because. I don't go into any of his episodes wanting to dislike them. Quite the opposite. I want him with basically his final episode and Jodie Whittaker's final episodes to really kind of give us as many answers to all these questions that have been asked over his tenure, and to just try and wrap things up, like, maybe not really well, but at least just to a satisfying enough conclusion to where we can say it wasn't great, but it wasn't like terrible. Like, I just hope that at least bits of it will be enjoyable enough for us to kind of, I think it's going to be like again with the Vanquishers, how we said right at the start of Doctor Who Flux on this podcast, how it was ultimately going to be like, we liked the idea of the Flux, but we were always kind of cautious about how it was going to be wrapped up in the series finale, and how that was going to be ultimately what we based the entire series on. I think the centenary could well be the same for not just this year's specials, but just for the whole era, really, just how we look back on it all and think, did it work? Did it not work quite as well as it could have done? I mean, I want it to be really good.
Yeah.
And I really do hope that Jodie is given a really good send-off. And just all of the cast and crew are given a really good send-off, really. But I don't know. It would be difficult for any writer to be able to pull it off, honestly. So Chris Chibnall, I mean, I don't know why he's done it to himself, but
He's just done it for the trailer. That's all he's done. He just thought, we can get a great trailer out of this, so let's throw everything into it and just cut it shot after shot after shot. I mean, at least we know nothing about the plot of this story. Like, as much as we've seen there's loads of stuff in it, we've got no idea what the storyline... I don't think we have any idea what the storyline to the Centenary is at all. Like, there's no impression of that. So that's, apart from, obviously, the Doctor is going to regenerate at the end of it. But that's exciting and something to theorise over for the next 6 months. It's going to be a long wait. I feel like it wasn't that long a wait from New Year's to this, but then it was only like 3.5, 4 months, whereas this is 6 months. And then it's like over a year until the 60th anniversary after that. So we're going to be not enjoying the most amount of Doctor Who over the next 18 months, but we'll get there. We'll get through it and it'll be all fun. And well, if you need something to pass the time, we're segueing onto our next little segment. For whatever reason, the BBC and all their great wisdom have decided to announce and release a DVD/Blu-ray release featuring Eve of the Daleks and Legend of the Sea Devils, 2 special box set thing, which it feels like a bit of a money grab. I don't know. Do you guys agree? It feels a bit... They did it in 2009 when they split up the specials back then and released them sort of in little bits together. Weirdly, they never released Eve of the Daleks on its own. So I guess that kind of justifies it a little bit more. But even so, it feels a bit odd to do this rather than wait until the Centenary comes out. Particularly if the issue were to be around like the Christmas market or something. Like, it's coming out in October, so you could easily do a DVD release in November for people to then enjoy. And inevitably, there's not a lot on it as well, apart from a couple of YouTube clips. And I think the audio commentaries are on there, so that's something. Audio commentaries are a rarity in the Jodie Whittaker era nowadays. So that's good. But I don't know, Charlie, are you going to be purchasing this release at all?
Probably not now, to be honest. Like, no. I don't know if they release all 3 of them as a trilogy.
Yeah.
Towards the end of the year, I'll get that, and if not, I'll just get the Centenary special and this release separate. Mm-hmm. But I'm not desperate to get it at the moment. I'm obviously still collecting classic Doctor Who, so I'd rather get that than just, if I want to watch Legend of the Sea Devils and Eve of the Daleks, I can just watch it on iPlayer. Exactly. For the next 6 months.
Exactly. Yeah, we'll survive with iPlayer for now. I mean, Ryan, I can't imagine you're particularly tempted to buy it.
It's really difficult to say because I kind of waited a bit on Revolution of the Daleks to see if it would show up, and it didn't show up on the Series 12 box set, and it definitely didn't show up on the Series 13 Flux box set. It only had it for a separate release. I think they're just doing the same. Going to do the same with this if history has taught us anything. So if that's going to be the case, then I'll probably I think I might end up purchasing it only just to add it to the collection so that I have everything. And also because I did enjoy Eve of the Daleks. I think that's been the best of these specials so far. So if I could easily rewatch that again, because I think that was definitely more job and more memorable than Legends of the Sea Devils. That's for damn sure.
Well, exactly, yeah. And Bill, you going to be rushing to the shops at the end of June to pick this up or not?
I mean, it's kind of difficult because when it was first announced, I did initially think, oh, I'll pre-order that straight away. And then I kind of thought about it and I thought, why are they doing just 2? Why are they not waiting until the Centenary is aired and then do all 3, or just do the 2 of them separately? It seems very, very strange idea to put Eve and Legend together without waiting for the Centenary or whatever. I mean, I really do hope that we just get the 3 of them on a box set like at the end of the year. But if not, then I suppose I'll probably pick this up and then the Centenary separately. But I mean, I think it's nearly 20 quid.
I know, for 2 episodes,
which is for just 2 episodes and barely even a handful of special features. I mean, I don't know. And I know the prices of things in general are going up, but it's still a bit like I'm not too sure about that.
Yeah, I don't think it's something I'm going to justify at the moment. I think I'll happily wait and hope that they're going to do a box set with all 3 of the specials in it. Just seems the more logical way to go, and I'm hopeful they'll do that come the end of the year. I guess we'll just have to wait and see on that, but it is out on the 28th of June if you want to pick it up. And if you do get it and want to send us a message and let us know what it's like, then please do. If there's anything interesting on the commentaries or anything like that, then I'd love to hear about it, but I don't think any of us are probably going to buy it because just doesn't seem worth it really. But one thing that is a little bit more worth it, just to finish off this podcast today, are the two classic Dalek movies of the 1960s that are getting yet another release on Blu-ray / 4K Ultra HD Blu-ray. Later this year in June and July. I think they're getting a cinema release as well. They're like new 4K versions, basically 4K upscales or not upscales, but 4K rescans of the original releases or the original films. They're doing both a steelbook edition of it and a sort of collector's edition, which I was trying to figure out exactly what it is. It seems to be like sort of a special box and then like a poster and some art cards and stuff like that. I mean, I don't know, Ryan, have you had a look? I think you said you'd pre-ordered one of the collector's editions. What's kind of the difference between the collector's edition and the limited edition for these two releases of the two films?
What I looked at in the pictures, it seemed like there's more stuff like more booklets, more retro poster artwork and stuff like that, and art cards. And I think it's also presented more in in one of those fancy collector's edition box, kind of like what you get with a typical collector's edition 4K release nowadays. So,
yeah.
And whereas I think the steel case, it's just basically steel case just on its own with hardly anything in it. And of looking at the two of them, I was tempted to, because both of them did look really good, and I kind of did a bit of a coin toss, and I ended up going with the collector's editions.
Yeah.
In the end, and they do look pretty cool, so I went with that one. But regardless, it is quite interesting to have the Dalek movies in 4K. I didn't think that was ever going to happen, but apparently they did, and the fact that they get a cinema release, if they do happen to have a release in cinema near where I live, I think I might be tempted to check it out, see what it's like on the big screen.
Yeah, exactly. I know. I was waiting to see where they're going to do these screenings. I think it'd be quite interesting to just see them on the big screen because we've never had the opportunity to see that before. So I don't know. That'll be interesting. I mean, I've gone down the route of the steelbook mainly to match the many other steelbooks that I have nowadays of all the classic Who animations, pretty much all of the new series. Albeit I haven't got the Flux steelbook yet, and I realised the other day that it's out of stock on Amazon now, so I'm a bit screwed. And I'm probably going to have to overpay for it on eBay because I've made that critical mistake of not buying it in time. But yeah, I don't know. It looks quite an interesting release. It looks like they've produced a new making of documentary for both of the films. They're called like the Dalek Legacy or something, I think. I don't know exactly what it is. I think it's a making of documentary of some form because I feel like they have the Dalek Mania documentary that was made in like the mid-90s that used to be on there. But that was very much more about kind of just an overall thing of the two films. And obviously it was made, 25, 27 years ago now. And so it's nice to kind of have something more up to date on the sort of production of the films, which I think will be really interesting. But Charlie, have you been tempted to get hold of either of these releases when they come out later this year?
Yes, I do plan to get the Steelbook. I haven't actually seen the Dalek films yet, so
very exciting.
Yeah, so I'm probably going to get the 4K Steelbook. I don't actually have any Steelbooks at the moment, but I'm hoping to get the Steelbook of this. That'll be good.
Yeah, it'd be good to start off the collection. I mean, I don't actually have a player that can play 4K yet. So, but I believe it also I've checked, and the releases also include like a normal Blu-ray disc version of everything as well. So if you don't have a 4K player, you can still get the release and watch it on a normal Blu-ray player with the Blu-ray version of it as well. So that's quite good. And Bill, have you got any much excitement for these releases later this year?
Yeah, I mean, I'm quite looking forward to it, actually. Yeah, it's nice to have them upscaled in 4K and released again in cinemas and everything. I have watched them, and I think they're pretty good, films. In some ways, kind of better than the TV stories, in the sense that, especially with the first one, because the very first Dalek story was like 7 episodes long and could be quite a hog to quite difficult to get through, really. Whereas the film adaptation of it is a lot shorter and just focuses on the main bits of the story, which is much better, much more enjoyable. I can't quite remember which one is it that's got the art cards and everything. Which edition is that?
I think that's the collector's edition one rather than the Steelbook.
Right. I will. I mean, obviously, it depends on if I'm able to, but I will certainly try to get one or maybe both of them two, because having just looked at pictures of like the cover art and everything, and even the regular Steelbook like cover art, just it looks really, really good. It's nice to have this kind of more niche kind of side to Doctor Who, kind of getting that same treatment as like all the other stories get. So yeah, I'm really looking forward to it.
Yeah, exactly. It's going to be, I think they're coming out in the middle of June and middle of July later this year, the two releases. So there'll be something to look forward to alongside probably the season 22 Blu-ray, which will also be coming around that time. So June and July is going to be a busy time with the Eve of the Daleks / Legends DVD / Blu-ray, then the season 22, and both of these films being released as well. I feel like I haven't bought any Doctor Who DVDs or Blu-rays in months, because I think the last one was season 17 box set in December. So it'll be nice to have something, new to arrive in terms of new releases for Doctor Who content, which is always a fun moment. But, well, thank you guys for a very fun chat about all things Doctor Who. It's been good fun to celebrate our first year anniversary, covering a bit of everything we do on the show, I think, in terms of Doctor Who episodes, discussing the DVDs and Blu-rays and everything around it. I think it's what we do, and it's been really fun to chat all about it. So that is just about it for this edition of Kavam. Please do check us out on Twitter at KavamPod, and you can also check us out, of course, if you're listening already, you might be listening on Apple Podcasts or Spotify, but those are the places to check them out, alongside on YouTube on my channel at EMS Productions, where you can always see us in vision. So hello if you're watching us on YouTube as well. But that's just about it from this edition of the podcast. I don't actually know what we're going to be talking about next time, but I'm sure it'll be interesting, because it's always fun on Kavam. I'm sure we'll be talking about another Blu-ray box set, or maybe a malign story or something like that, or the history of I don't know what. But we'll figure it out. We'll come up with something fun, and we're back in a couple of weeks' time for a brand new edition of Kavam. But until then, it's a very warm goodbye.